Okay, hi all. So today we are going to do chapter 9. It's about the application of international trade. It's related to what we did about consumer surplus, producer surplus in the earlier chapters. So this is a different view. Okay, before starting, I want to explain you this week's quiz 1. So this was a postponed quiz. You were supposed to have it last week, but due to earthquake, we postponed it. I hope people who are affected from the earthquake are better now. Um, for the quiz, uh, you are going to be responsible until demand supply effects. So it's included, okay? And after what we did, it's not in the quiz, but I suggest you to work on what we did up to now, because midterm is close, okay? Midterm is close. And for the quiz, you are going to be given 30 minutes. And for uploading your results, you're going to have 5 extra minutes. Okay, you're going to upload your results to MetaClass. Okay, we are gonna add an activity to there. Okay, and you're gonna see that. Okay, it's titled as quiz 1. You're gonna see in the MetaClass. Okay. And we will ask you to have your cameras open. It's gonna be like a prova for the midterm, okay? And I plan it to start at 2:40, okay? Friday 2:40, and it's gonna take half an hour, okay? Before the quiz, we may saw some questions regarding what we did this week, okay? And I'm gonna open a Zoom activity before that, okay? It's gonna start at 1:40 as usual class time. Okay, that's all for today, for the quiz. If you have any questions, you can ask me, okay? Friday 2:40. Okay, now, so in this chapter, we're going to look for the answers to these questions. What determines how much of a good a country will import or export? Who benefits from the trade? Who does trade harm? Do the gains outweigh losses? And if policymakers restrict imports, who benefits? Okay, who's harmed? Do the gains from restricting imports outweigh losses? Okay, what are some common arguments for restricting the trade? Do they have a merit? Okay, now from chapter 3, from the comparative advantage, absolute advantage chapter, a country has a comparative advantage in a good if it produces the good at a lower opportunity cost than the other countries, okay? And countries can gain from trade if each exports the goods in which it has a comparative advantage, okay? Now we apply the tools of welfare economics to see where these gains come from and who gets them, okay? So we are, this PW is the world price of the good and the price that prevails in the world markets, okay? And PD is the domestic price without trade, okay? If price of domestic producers is domestic price is lower than the world price, country has comparative advantage in the good, and under free trade, country exports the goods. Okay, if domestic price is lower than the world price, then it has a comparative advantage and it's going to produce and send it to other countries. Okay, meaning that exporting the good to other countries. So if domestic price is higher than the world price, then country doesn't have a comparative advantage in producing goods. It's going to import the good. Okay, under free trade, country imports the good. Okay, a small economy is a price taker in world market, and its actions have no effect in the world price. Okay, not always true, especially for the US, but simplifies the analysis without changing its lessons. Okay, when a small economy engages in free trade, PW is the only relevant price. Okay, no seller would accept less than PW since she could sell the good for PW in the world markets, and no buyer would pay more than world price, since he could buy the good for PW in the world markets. Okay, country that exports soybeans, for instance, this is the soybean market, supply and demand intersect at these points, and so domestic price is $4 and equilibrium quantity is 500. Okay, and now suppose world price is 6. Okay, world price is 6. Then what will happen? Okay, so since soybean can be produced at a lower price domestically than the world, okay, it means that this country has a comparative advantage in producing soybeans. Okay, then what will happen? It's gonna export soybeans to other countries at a price 6. Okay, under free trade, domestic consumers demand 300 at price 6, and domestic producers will supply 750 at price 6. So it's gonna export. Okay, it's gonna export, and the amount of the export is 450. Okay, now if we look at the welfare analysis, okay, without trade, so the area between demand and the price is the consumer surplus. Consumer surplus will be the A plus B. Okay, and producer surplus is the area between price and supply curve, which is C. Okay, so total surplus is A plus B plus C. Okay, now what if free trade is allowed? What if this country is able to export some of its goods to the world? Okay, with trade, consumer surplus, the country's consumers, domestic consumers, since the price increased, so consumer surplus dropped. Okay, dropped to A, but producer surplus increased, right? So more suppliers are able to supply now, and producer surplus is B plus C plus D. Okay, and total surplus increased at an amount of D. Okay, and this increase is coming from the increase from the producer surplus. Okay, so gains from trade is coming to the producer surplus. Okay, let's look at this example. So try to solve it by yourself. What if, so without trade, so domestic price is 3,000 and equilibrium quantity is 400. In world market, suppose the price is lower, okay, 1,500. Now what will happen? Okay, now what will happen? So this time, country doesn't have a comparative advantage in producing plasma TVs, right? So plasma TVs can be produced at a lower price somewhere else, okay? Then what will happen? Country will import those TVs from outside, okay? And under free trade, how many TVs will the country import or export? It's gonna import, and the amount of import is quantity demanded at 1,500 is 600, and quantity supplied at 1,500 is 200, and the difference between those two will be imported. 400 will be imported. And where is the consumer surplus? So consumer surplus without trade, you're going to have consumer surplus without trade and producer surplus without trade. And find also consumer surplus if free trade is allowed. Okay, this time due to imports, consumers benefit because consumers can buy at a lower price the good, and producer surplus will decrease. Okay, under free trade, okay, so this is the amount of imports, we solved it already. So without trade, consumer surplus was A, producer surplus B plus C, and total surplus was A plus B plus C. With trade, and now consumer surplus increased to this green area. Instead of A, it is A plus B plus D. Okay, this is the area between new prices 1,500 and the demand curve, which is this. And producer surplus is just C. Okay, so again, the price is 1,500 and the area between supply and new price is C. So total surplus A plus B plus C plus D. Okay. If the country imports the good, the benefit, welfare benefit comes to the consumers. If the country exports the goods, welfare benefit comes to the producers. Okay. So this is the gain from trade. Okay. So if domestic price is lower than the world price, then country has a comparative advantage in producing the good. Then it's going to export the good, consumer surplus falls, producer surplus rises, and total surplus rises. Okay. And if the domestic price is higher than the world price, country imports the good, consumer surplus rises, and producer surplus falls, total surplus rises. Okay, in either case, due to trade, total surplus will rise. Okay, it's either going to benefit the producers or to the consumers. Okay, whether a good is imported or exported, trade creates winners or losers. Okay, but the gains exceed the losses. Okay, other benefits of international trade. So consumers enjoy increased variety of goods. Producers sell to a larger market, may achieve lower cost by producing on a larger scale. Okay, competition from abroad may reduce market power of the domestic firms, which would increase the total welfare. And trade enhances the flow of ideas, facilitates the spread of technology around the world. Okay. Then, so give some examples about the benefit of this international trade. Okay. Then, why all the opposition to trade? So recall one of the 10 principles in chapter 1. So trade can make everyone better off. Okay, the winners of trade could compensate the losers and still be better off. Okay, yes, such compensation rarely occurs. The losses are often highly concentrated among a small group of people who feel them acutely. Okay, and the gains are often spread thinly over many people who may not see how trade benefits them. Hence, the losers have more incentive to organize and lobby for the restrictions of the trade. Okay, so how restrictions can occur? A tariff. One way to do is a tariff. Okay, so a tax on imports. How it's going to affect? So let's look at the cotton t-shirts market. So world price is $20, and suppose there's a tariff, $10 t-shirt, and consumers must pay $30 for an imported t-shirt. So domestic producers can charge $30 per t-shirt. Okay, in general, the price facing domestic buyers and sellers equal to world price plus the tax. Okay, now so this is the cotton t-shirt market. Supply and demand intersects at here. Suppose the world price is $20 and a $10, so buyers demand 80 at that price and seller supplies 25. Imports is the difference between those two. It's 55. And suppose a tax came to the imported goods and then price rises to $30. Now at that 30, quantity demanded is 70 and quantity supplied is 40. Okay, and the amount of imports is 30. Okay, now let's look at the welfare analysis with the tariff. Okay, so with the free trade, okay, consumer surplus will be what? Price will be 20, and then consumer surplus will be A plus B plus C plus D plus E plus F, and producer surplus is just G. Okay, and total surplus will be sum of them, all of them. Okay, with the tariff, okay, what will happen? Consumer surplus will drop. Okay, why? Because consumers are gonna pay a higher price. Instead of paying 20, they are gonna pay 30 now. Consumer surplus is this green area. Okay, and then producer surplus will increase. Now more of the suppliers will supply the good. Okay, at price 30, G plus C will be the producer surplus. Okay, and then what is D plus E plus F? Okay, E is the revenue to the government. Okay, so government is obtaining this E. What happened D? Okay, so D and F are dead weight loss. Okay, so total surplus is decreased by D and F. Okay, and then remember, so this decrease in total surplus is called as dead weight loss. Okay, dead weight loss, D is the dead weight loss from overproduction of shirts. Okay, and then F is coming from the dead weight loss from underconsumption of the shirts. Okay, so instead of 80 quantity demanded was 80, now less of people will be able to buy. Okay, and this will lead to dead weight loss. Okay, similarly in D. Okay, it's for the supply side though. Okay, another way of restricting trade is import quota. An import quota is a quantitative limit on the imported goods. Okay, so country can say that we will import maximum this much. Okay, mostly has the same effect as tariff. It's going to raise its price, reduces the quantity of imports, reduces buyers' welfare, and increases sellers' welfare. A tariff creates revenue for the government. A quota creates profit for the foreign producers of the imported good who can sell them at a higher price. Or government could auction license to import to capture this profit as a revenue. Usually it doesn't. Okay. Argument for restricting the trade. Okay, so the jobs argument. What is it? Trade destroys jobs in industries that compete with imports. They are saying, what is the response from the economists? Look at the data to see whether rising imports cause rising unemployment. It generally doesn't. Okay, so with the rising imports, it's gonna the unemployment decreased. Okay, so total unemployment doesn't rise as imports rise because job losses from imports are offset by job gains from export industries. Okay, even if all goods could be produced more cheaply abroad, the country need only have a competitive advantage to have a viable export industry and to gain from trade. Okay, so the second argument is national security argument. An industry vital to national security should be protected from foreign competition to prevent dependence on imports that could be disrupted during wartime. Okay, what's the economist's response? Fine, as long as we base policy on true security needs, but producers may exaggerate their own importance to national security to obtain protection from foreign competition. Infant industry argument. A new industry argues for temporary protection until it's mature and can compete with foreign firms. Economist response, difficult for government to determine which industries will eventually be able to compete and whether benefits of establishing these industries exceed the cost to consumers of restricting imports. Besides, if a firm will be profitable in the long run, it should be willing to incur temporary losses. Okay. Unfair competition argument. Producers argue their competitors in another country have an unfair advantage due to government subsidies. Oh, great. Then we can import extra cheap products subsidized by other countries' taxpayers. The gains to our consumers will exceed the losses our producers. The protection as a bargaining chip argument. Okay, the US can threaten to limit imports of French wine unless France lifts their quotas on American beef. Economist response, suppose France refuses, then US must choose between two bad options. Restrict imports from France, which reduces welfare in the US, and don't restrict imports, which reduces US credibility. Okay. So a country can liberalize trade with unilateral reductions in trade restrictions, multilateral agreements with other nations. So there are trade agreement examples, okay, NAFTA or GATT. So World Trade Organizations enforces trade agreements and resolves disputes, okay. So what is the summary? A country will export a good if the world price of the good is higher than the domestic price without trade, okay? Trade raises producer surplus, reduces consumer surplus, and raises total surplus, okay? And a country will import a good if the world price is lower than the domestic price without trade, and trade lowers producer surplus, but raises consumer surplus and total surplus. In either case, total surplus is increasing, either in the export or import. A tariff benefits producers and generates revenue for the government, but loss to consumers exceeds the gains. Okay. Common arguments for restricting trade include protecting jobs, defending national security, helping infant industries, preventing unfair competition, and responding to foreign trade restrictions. Some of these arguments have merit in some cases, but economists believe free trade is usually a better policy. Okay, that's it. If you have any questions, please let me know. Okay. Okay.